sermon this morning is taken from Gospel according to Matthew, and this is from chapter 22, verse 34, entitled The Greatest Commandment. When the Pharisees heard that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together. And one of them, a lawyer, asked Jesus a question as a test. "Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest?" And Jesus said to him, "You shall love the sovereign your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and all your strength. This is the greatest and first commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets." And the question is, how do you know if you love something? I want to take you through 4 things that we probably can or should love: our car, our house, other people, and God. And let's just take a look at to what degree we love these things, right? How do we know if we love our car? Well, are we deeply grateful for what the car allows us to do? The freedom to get somewhere that's relatively far, say in 10 minutes, 15 minutes. The comfort against the elements, being able to turn the heat on. Just adjust the temperature according to how you want it. And when you have a nice car that you love, the way it handles, it feels good. The way it looks feels good. And then there's the side where we show our love for our car, and how do we do that? Well, we pay attention if any lights come on, we adjust it, we're listening to if there's any problems, we're changing the oil according to the schedule, we're rotating the tires, whatever we're doing, we're putting love into it to make sure it continues to function as we would like it to. And when that all works out, and when you actually have love for your car, it's a beautiful thing. It's not like we're going to be obsessed with our car, and our car is our God, no. But I don't know if you guys were at that point where you never had a car, and then all of a sudden you had a car, and it's like, wow, life really changes when you own a car. You have a lot of freedom. And with that freedom comes responsibility, too. You got to take care of it. What about our houses? Do we love our house? Well, a house provides a tremendous place of refuge. How many hours do you spend in your house? And how much do you take care of the house? It's an interesting situation because there's a lot of things that we can just let slide on our cars and our houses, and there's really not anybody that's making us accountable for it. Recently, in beginning to purchase houses for the purpose of rental, I move into somebody else's house and get a feel for to what degree they have loved the house. And it's not like it's horrible, but the way that I want to love a house is maybe a little bit different. I just replaced all the baseboards at the house that I just bought, and it was a lot of work. But to walk in there and look at new baseboards that are all perfectly, well, as much as I can do, good corners and painted, it just feels really good to me. It's like, I really want the people living here to have a good experience. I don't want them to look at the baseboards and go like, oh yeah, crappy baseboards, it's just a rental. I want you to have love for the physical possessions like your car and your house. And how do you demonstrate that? You treat everything with a certain care and gentleness. If a door is chafing and you keep jamming it in, it's like, well, maybe eventually the house will resettle. It's like, no, we got to get out the sander and we got to plane it down, and then it's nice and smooth again. And if a faucet is leaking, or if there's a little bit of trouble with the way the kitchen cabinet closes, we attend to it. We attend to it because when it functions smoothly, there's a relaxation. Now, all of a sudden, we make a huge jump when it comes to loving others, right? Because the house pretty much and the car will respond to the love that we put into it. If you drive your car 60, 70, 80,000 miles, of course you're going to expect certain things were going to begin to require attention. But a car will not exert its will against you because it doesn't like you. Human beings have that possibility, right? Or even if they're not aware of it. So how do we love something that exerts its will in a way that jars us? Well, that's a lot harder. But I was thinking about Peter Frampton today. And he had a song, right? Baby, I love your way. And if you think back to, when you were attracted to somebody and you wanted to be with them, and it's like the way that they are, there's something about it that just attracts you. The way they smile, the way they reveal their vulnerability, the way that they love you, the way that they make gestures on your behalf, the way they buy little things for you, the way that they are considerate of that which is important to you. Baby, I want to love your way. I want to be with you night and day. So when we love somebody, now of course in the beginning of a relationship there is that intense honeymoon period, and there is that desire to just sort of be, barnacled at the hip to the person because it's just so good, right? When you love somebody, you want to provide that experience for them. You want to show that you've been paying attention and that this is really meaningful to them, so you want to buy them a little gift, or you realize that this is really important, so you amend your schedule, and you show your love by your actions, by the way that you listen to them, by the way that you value what they say, by the way that you are with them. You're generous with your love, with your energy. And sometimes that's really hard because can be hyper aware of, is that same energy coming back to me? Is that really what the other person is doing? On our path, let's just preclude our one romantic partner for a moment, because that's a special relationship. But on our path, we are called to love everybody, regardless of how they treat us back. Now, we do have boundaries. We don't hang around with people that, just suck the life force from us. But maintaining that, I care about that person, I want to always be a positive, generous source in their life, to whatever degree they're willing to receive. So their actions may create a boundary as far as how much I can interact with them, but in my heart, there's no blockage. And Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. So one way to think of that is how would I want to be treated? I treat myself the way that I would want to be treated. So that's how I should treat other people. And who is my neighbor? Everybody's my neighbor. Everybody on the planet is my neighbor. Really what I want to focus on is, how do I love God? Because here we are, coming to the mystical path, and we want to know God. And you'll see a lot of books entitled How to Know God. But where are the books that say, how do I love God? How do I know if I love God? What does it mean to love God? Well, we can look at the car, and the house, and others, and go, can I bring that same attitude to something that is very challenging for me to conceptualize at this point? I mean, I'm loving, it's not like a car, but it does provide me a lot of things that I value. I mean, life itself is sort of the key, right? And you think about the mobility of your body, and when you take care of your body and your body's ability to allow you to do amazing things. Do we feel gratitude for that? Because we didn't create the body. We didn't come up with all the bodily systems. And what else has God given to us? God has given to us the capability to imagine, to think, to create, to act, to speak, to communicate. I mean, some days I walk around and I just go, this is amazing. I mean, we didn't make a tree. We never made a single tree. All the elements that exist in all the houses and all the buildings and all the cars, those at some point were just raw organic elements. So here's God going like, here's a great palette for you guys to play around with. And I don't know how many thousands or millions of years later, we've got buildings and we've got cars and we've got airplanes, and we've progressed to a certain point of mobility, certain point of creation. We can build buildings, up to a certain level. We can't go higher than that yet, but maybe eventually we will. And that all comes from these organic elements that God just said, I'm not going to tell you what to do with these things. If you ever taught art or something, you put out all the supplies and you go, kids, make something and let's see what happens. And kids get excited about that because we don't tell them you have to do this, 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 and this, right? And isn't that a beautiful thing, how God gave us this planet and said, there's going to be certain animals that you'll like the flavor of them. But, don't be mean to them. Well, apparently they didn't get that memo. But anyway, and if you don't want the animals, that's okay. You get all the plants, too. We get all that. And, as a bonus, we got these weird creatures in the sea that you can pull out. And you can eat those too. I mean, it's kind of amazing, really. If you've ever grown anything, when you start off even if you get a little seedling from Home Depot and then you watch it, and then a little tiny pepper, a little tiny tomato, it's like the size of a pinhead. And then over about 3-4 months, it becomes something that tastes freaking amazing. How's that happen? I mean, does that not make you love God? I mean, that's just one little thing. You just go, we tend to obsess about everything that sucks in life. But even just the sun. You ever been really cold and then the sun just is like everything to you? I mean, there's so many things to look around and just go, this is amazing. And then just the fact that you can create you can take some wood and make this. You can take some metal and take that. And these tools that we've come up with, I mean, that's one way to just go, yeah, I love you, God, because you give so much to us. And you give us the freedom to do whatever we want. How do we demonstrate our love for God? Well, this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to learn. Because if we just receive, then at some point, according to the law, we will be tapped out. Because the whole process is about giving and receiving. And receiving is a form of giving too. But we want to give to God. So let's look at how do we love others? Well, today's Mother's Day. How do you love your kids? Well, you want good things for them. You care about them. You listen to them. You value what they say. You honor their free will. You demonstrate your love for them by spending time with them, by wanting to spend time with them. I mean, maybe you got to meditate on it and go, what does it mean to love another human? Who are the humans that I love in my life now, and how do I demonstrate that? Now, can I take that same attitude and apply it to God? Granted, it's harder because God does not have the physical form that we're all used to, not like a car or a house or another person. So we are loving something that we have to somehow intuit is here. And so we look around and go, well, there's definitely something here. There's many people I met who don't want to call it God, but they go, well, I know there's something, an energy, a presence. Well, we're, of course, going beyond that. And the teaching is that we have the presence of God within us. So why don't we start with loving that? Loving the self that we are. Again, it's not that easy because we're used to loving something that's not us. It's outside of us. It's a person, a car, a house. And now we have to love something that's inside of us. Strangely, it's hard to love something that's a part of us, because we're used to being down on ourselves. When we go through the retrospection, you get to see all the ways in which oh man, I wish I hadn't done that. I didn't realize I was doing that. Well, we never want to turn against the self that we are. We want to realize, okay, I made mistakes because nobody was telling me, and I was angry, and I was frustrated, and I was bored, and nobody really guided me. So we forgive. And we know that God forgives. But the way that we love God is that we make time for God every day, which means, in our case, we meditate. And we pray and communicate to God, and to whatever degree we can receive. This is the basis of the beginning of the relationship. Right? We know that we're putting something out and something's coming back. It's a little bit like sending a letter in the mail, right? There isn't that personal touch. I mean, there's the personal touch of somebody writing specifically for me, but how great it is when we can get on the phone. I mean, back in the old days, you'd send letters and that was cool, but then talking on the phone was a big deal. Because it was the immediate interaction. And that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming to basically connect in that way with God, the God self. Now, where others make it challenging for us to love them, because they'll do things that we don't, we make a nice gesture, they don't receive it. They act in a way that doesn't consider us. Yeah, it's painful. It's disappointing sometimes. It's frustrating. I wish they could just see that we're actually trying to help them and not be so prickly and not be so snarky. Well, of course, could God not look to us and go, I wish they could just receive what I have to give. Why do they have to be so snarky? Why do they have to be so sarcastic? I gave them free will, but why are they making these bizarre choices? These are very hurtful to themselves and others. But the beautiful thing is that God does not say, you know what, do whatever you want. I'm out. People may experience that. They might go, God, why? That's a misunderstanding. God gives us a lot of freedom. So we are seeking to make time to communicate with God. We are seeking to live a life that is pleasing to God. And how do we do that? Well, by following the precepts that Jesus teaches of loving each other and listening to each other and caring about each other. You know, I mean, doesn't it please you when your kids do the things, if you go back to when they were young, and all they wanted to do was help? You know, there's a phase where they try to help and they can't really do much. It actually creates more work for you. But, you know, but their hearts are so pure and just wanting to participate. So you let them do it, and then later on you fix, you know, whatever they did. Because that's love also, right? How loving is it to go, I know you want to help, Johnny, you're 4, but you don't have the skill yet. You lack coordination, son. You know, the kid's like, what's coordination? Right, so that's not loving, right? So God gives us that freedom, and we should live a life that's pleasing to God, because that's a demonstration of our love. You know, which is why we abstain from certain activities, because you're probably starting to sense. I definitely felt this when I watched the play last night. When they did the lewd sexual things, I don't like it. I don't feel good about it, because years and years on the path have taught me that when somebody gives themselves sexually to another person, it is a sacred thing. It is a very, very precious thing that I give myself in that way. I mean, you know, to let one person's body come so close to another person's body, that, I believe, is an act that should be where love is present. Now, I understand in that era, in 1968 or whatever it was, that, you know, people were rebelling against a kind of a constricted perspective. And then they had to correct back to, because it wasn't really, you know, free love was not exactly free, because it wasn't exactly love. But I don't like to see the debasement of something so special and precious. You know, to turn it just into a sort of an animalistic act of self-indulgence. And I don't believe that God finds joy when we cross those lines. When we as humans go, I can do whatever I want. So that does create some constriction. I mean, this path is not about freedom to do whatever you want. You have that freedom, and then through discernment, you strive to do that which you believe would give God a good feeling. That's your demonstration of love. So exactly what you were saying and what you were writing about this week is that this is hard. I'm tempted to want to do this because I've always done this, and the other person's not even appreciating what I'm trying to do, and it's like, it seems like it's never going to end, and how do we get to a place where I'm okay? Well, you get to the place of okay right now, today, in this second, by going, I'm a work in progress, and that's okay. And the emotions that come up when I strive to give and live a life that's pleasing to God, that's the cross that I have to bear. And I look to Jesus, who carried that cross when he was whipped and nearly half dead, and I go, I'm not that bad. You know, so I look to Jesus, who outwardly did what we have to do, so that we had an example of it. And I go, what else can I do? For by carrying the cross of my own emotional turmoil, as I learn to be somebody who lives a life that's pleasing to God, there is nothing else. There is nothing else that matters. And all the peripheral enjoyment that I get from the laughter and the fun and the good moments and all the connection, I go, God, you grace me with those, because as a human being, I have the capacity to experience connection with other people and moments of laughter and unexpected joy and surprise and creativity. And these are all endowed into us. I mean, even just that sense of when you romantically become really into somebody. I mean, it's like something changes in your body and your mind, and you can't eat and you can't sleep, and it's just some physiological thing that happens. Who programmed us for that? I mean, there's all sorts of cool stuff that you go, whoever created human beings was very, very deep in how they went about it. You know, I mean, even just we've been talking about healing, because I had this injury, and there's so many cool things about how the body just goes into healing mode. And here we are trying to figure out, but you know, there's always that element of God provides some, and then we have to do something. It's not just like everything is given and you just, you know, saunter through life. I think we're also programmed to love that challenge of like, okay, Somebody laid before me all the ingredients, I'm going to make a killer meal. You know, it's not just like I wave my hand and the meal is made. I have to toil. I have to put the effort for it. And so then when it's done, there's a sense of, wow, that's cool. Before it was a bunch of raw things, and now a creation exists that brings joy to other people. So as you go forth in this week, you can be asking yourself, did today demonstrate my love for God? Did I make time to pray that God would speak to me, as we heard in the song? Did I pray to God for the things that I need and express gratitude because I know they're going to come? Did I treat my neighbor in a way that God would say, hey, that was cool. I know the neighbor didn't really appreciate it, but so what? I do. I saw that what you did was giving and generous. So, you know, thumbs up to you. I'm watching you, and I'm just excited about what's happening. So I want you to have that sense that that's how God is. God is omnipresent, aware of us. Yeah, sometimes it's pressure. It's like, man, I'd really like to check out of consciousness. Can I just punch the clock and become unconscious for a couple hours? I mean, is that such a big deal? And God's like, you can do it. It's up to you. It's kind of a sad moment for me, but I understand. It's a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure to be constantly vigilant about how I am. So, do as much as you can and have faith that it's going to get easier, but it tends to get harder before it gets easier, and then it's easy for a while, and then it gets hard again. And it's, you know, the cyclical nature of how this works.